So yeah, I want to welcome everybody in as people start to kind of pour into the webinar here. So welcome into the latest webinar in Metric Theory's holiday series. So this one is Rebounding from COVID-19 for a Huge High Season. So we're really excited about this webinar. I think for some retailers, COVID-19 has been a huge increase in demand. And for others, it's taken some of the wind out of their sails. So today, what we're going to do is talk to two Metric Theory clients who have been resilient to the challenges they face that are brought on by COVID-19. We're going to hear how it's impacted their businesses, how they've responded, and ultimately now how they're gearing up for high season, even as a lot of the industry still experiences some of those difficulties. Right? So we're going to start off by asking questions of our panel. And then we also want our audience's questions. So you have a little Q&A widget down at the bottom of your Zoom window. So enter your questions in there. We'll also check the chat just in case, but as things go forward, using the Q&A widget will be the best way to get questions answered. So with that, we're going to introduce our panel. So here with us today, we have Grace Lee. Grace is the co-founder and CEO of Birdy, which is a direct-to-consumer bridal brand that's looking to change the way that women shop for their weddings. So hello, Grace. Hi.
Hi, Josh.
And we also have Vic Hebbar. Vic oversees growth marketing for Tradesy. And Tradesy, if you haven't heard of it before, is an online luxury fashion marketplace. So hello, Vic.
Hey, sorry, I had a little bit of a mic issue, but it's back.
Okay, great.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sure. And just to introduce myself, I'm Josh McClouse. I'm our Senior Director of Marketing at Metric Theory. Just here to ask the questions. So I'd love to start off with our panel by just letting our audience know a little bit more about you. And if you could share your backgrounds and how you got to your current companies, I think that would be a great place to start. Why don't we start with you, Grace?
Sure. So I'm Grace Lee. I'm the founder and CEO of Birdy. As Josh mentioned, we are a direct-to-consumer bridal brand on a mission to change the way that women shop for their weddings. My background is a bit unique. I spent most of my career in editorial. I was a writer and reporter for InStyle magazine, where I kind of learned the art of storytelling to women. And then I went to go work in-house for brands such as Kate Spade New York, in New York, and then when I moved to LA, I started working in beauty for Stila Cosmetics and Kate Somerville Skincare, doing more, social media, digital content, and marketing. And that's kind of where I fell in love with e-commerce. I myself had been a bridesmaid about 6 times, and so I really understood the pain points inside and out of being a bridesmaid. And I just, the last wedding I was in a couple of years ago, I just realized, wow, there's major white space here. Why isn't anyone doing affordable bridesmaid dresses? And I should mention that all of our bridesmaid dresses are under $100, where the average price point is $140. So we're priced about 30% less than the average. And so, that's kind of where I started. I was like, no one's doing bridesmaid dresses well online at an affordable price point and serving the customer in a way that she likes to shop. And so I wanted to be the first to do it. And so Birdy was born. We're just celebrating our 3rd anniversary. So on Monday is our 3rd birthday.
Awesome. Congratulations. It's huge.
Thanks.
And Vic, maybe a little bit about your background.
Yeah, first just got to say, what a cool story, right, from Grace. I love it when people find a business and they start this up and it's like directly connected to an experience that they've had, and it's just really awesome to hear that. So my story is not as cool, but I'll tell it anyway. So my background is in digital marketing strategy, really across kind of unrelated industries. I cut my teeth in the biopharma space and then jumped over into gaming and esports. And then I got the entrepreneurial bug and I left and built a couple of businesses in the e-commerce and apparel space. And that kind of set me up for the next phase, where I came across Tradesy. As Josh mentioned, it's a luxury resale marketplace. And it kind of represented a confluence of a lot of the elements that I had enjoyed and pursued throughout the various kind of phases of my career. And it so happened that there's a role that enabled me to utilize all these skills and lessons and things that I picked up in all these different places and kind of do it at a scale and kind of pace that I was really excited about. So yeah, I'm pumped to be at Tradesy. Today is actually my 1-year anniversary. So kind of made it this far. So that's something, I guess. So
Congrats.
Congrats to you as well.
Thank you.
Awesome. So, a couple of different concepts, but both obviously have had some impact from COVID-19. I personally know several people who had to move their weddings this year, Grace and Vic, for luxury fashion and apparel. I think apparel across the board, unless you sell leggings and pajamas and other things that people are wearing working from home. It's been probably less likely that people are shopping as much as they used to. So with both of your companies seeing an impact from COVID-19, I'd love if you could describe, what that impact was like, and then also how you responded to it. Vic, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it would have been nice if we did wine delivery or something. Business would have been a booming for us with COVID, but alas, that's not what we did. We sell luxury fashion, and as you can imagine, when COVID hit and all the uncertainty kind of presented itself, going out and buying luxury handbags probably wasn't at the top of people's minds when it hit, rightfully so. So it was a huge impact to our business initially, and it kind of made us really ask ourselves, how do we respond to this? How do we, what does the end of this tunnel look like, and how do we get there? And really what that made us do is kind of rewire how we did some fundamental aspects of our business and marketing in general. Kind of to summarize, one of the things we did was we kind of shifted away from kind of a discount focused approach to marketing and enticing customers to purchase based on having these coupons, and kind of pared it down to a really ROMS, return on marketing spend focus approach that kind of enabled us to find something of a set point for our business to operate despite maybe more depressed overall revenue and kind of weather the storm. So that was really important, and also enabled us to find kind of a switch we could flip in case in the future things like this happen, which is really cool. Secondly, we kind of pivoted, this kind of ties into the first point, we kind of pivoted at least to get through the narrows from a growth focused organization to a profit and cash flow focused organization. You've got to have cash to get to these times. And then finally, I think, interestingly, I love this kind of stuff. Although I don't know how much other people do, but we had to kind of reconfigure how we operated internally as a team, as an organization. And some of it was kind of looking at our planning cycles, especially if you look back at March or April, which feels like 15 years ago at this point. But, people, if you were making semesterly or yearly plans in a business like ours, that's kind of tough because the whole landscape was changing every couple of weeks. We didn't know what was happening. So we shortened our kind of planning cycles quite dramatically so that we could find something that, one, was kind of long enough. Maybe we looked at like 6 weeks, for example, where it's long enough so we can actually build something that was worthwhile and put something out there, but short enough so that we could pivot if needed. And it gave us some flexibility based on these changing objectives and all the external forces that were out there, so that we could also kind of have laser focus on what we needed to work on at that time. And so those kind of three things helped us kind of get through a lot of the impact of COVID.
Wow. Yeah. The shorter planning cycles seems to be something that I think a lot of businesses are probably going through right now, even if they're not, like, sometimes feel like they're more flying by the seat of their pants, but that helps you at least stay a little bit more on track, huh?
Yeah, and I think part of it is finding, because you want to have a sort of a overall objective or a vision for the year. You want to know what does good look like? What are we working towards over the course of the year, or a 3-year plan, or whatever makes sense for your category or your business. But you want to still have that and say, hey, this is what we know, this is what we don't know. We're going to go for this. But in the meantime, let's not get distracted. Let's focus on what we think we're pretty confident we can do in the next month or two.
Yeah. Grace, what about you? What impacts did you feel from COVID? How did you respond?
Oh yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, the minute the CDC canceled all large events and gatherings, we saw an immediate drop off in volume. It hit, I mean, we're an events-based business, and so it hit our industry pretty hard. from a marketing perspective, we said, you know what, right now is not the time to try to get people to buy their bridesmaid's dress when there's so much uncertainty. And it was such an emotional time for a lot of our customers. And so what we immediately ended up doing was we started scaling back marketing spend. We're like, there's a time and a place where she's going to be ready to buy her bridesmaid's dress. But, you know, for the month of March, April, May, all weddings were postponed. And so we really decided to dial back our paid spend and really lean into our organic channels. You know, asking, constantly checking in with our customers, how are you doing? What stage are you in? Like, what are you guys doing? Are you postponing? Are you planning to do a micro wedding? Like, what's going on? And it actually really worked to our benefit in a way. A lot of our brides kind of would turn to the experts and you know, like the Knot or brides, and to an extent us, because we were just pumping out content that was relevant to helping them sort of navigate such a tricky, unprecedented time. And so we really leaned into our channels. We you know, wanted to keep a temperature check on where they were in their wedding planning journey, and we kind of used that to not only forecast, but to understand whether or not we should turn up our marketing spend, which we did sort of incrementally
Wow.
as time went on. And, you know, like that customer feedback loop is something that, you know, informs every decision that we make. And so COVID was really no exception. And just having that direct feedback was really helpful in helping us understand how to make some decisions. And so, you know, I think as a result, 7 months later, a lot of brides kind of I think we built like a relationship with them. And so now that, you know, things are we're kind of coming out of COVID and a lot of people are feeling great about their 2021 weddings, we're busy prospecting them again and staying in, you know, on their radar. We're still not fully at a place where we're shoving bridesmaids dresses down their throats, although a lot of weddings are back on. Starting in June, we started to see them kind of, you know, more weddings happening. But we're anticipating a really big year next year because there's just so much pent up demand. So we're staying in front of her. Internally, we kind of went into survival mode. One of our investors very early on when COVID first hit, he was like, all right, ladies, to my co-founder, like, what are you guys going to do? You know, if you can survive COVID, you'll really thrive. So what are you going to do to survive? And so we really stayed lean internally. We were very, very, very prudent about cash burn, and we did a lot of scenario modeling, like more so than we ever had done historically. And we were reforecasting often, and I think that helped us feel confident in that, you know, we would survive COVID. And I feel like that's put us in a position of strength now. So
Yeah. Oh man, how important that must be to be able to have that kind of direct conversation with your customer at that point in time. I mean, listen to all the things it's given you, a sense of community, right? A way to stay in touch and to keep, you know, have them develop more relationship with the brand, forecasting of what you can expect as a business, and the peace of mind that comes with after what happened in the spring and everything was a big unknown.
yeah.
I bet that you were probably one of the first retailers to go to your investors and say, actually, we feel pretty good, all things considered, because of what we're seeing and what we're hearing from our customers.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Brides are probably the most optimistic group of people you'll meet. And so, you know, a majority of people, even if they've had to pivot their plans, are hell-bent on still having their wedding, thankfully with their bridal party and like those closest to them. And so it's been great. It's been okay. Yeah.
Can I just say
Yeah.
anecdotally, I'm starting to go and attend Zoom weddings where there's a full bridal party. So you know,
Yep.
I can say at least I've been seeing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to just quickly echo what Josh was saying. I think that is sort of, in a way, the dream is to have that direct organic relationship with your audience. And, you know, it is a silver lining, right, for 2020. I got to assume that you're going to kind of continue to have that as part of a core part of your business and strategy moving forward, is that organic presence.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're a brand that was essentially built on Instagram. And so I feel like we have a very special relationship with our audience, our followers on Instagram. And it really, it's a great platform for us to tell our story, to connect, get feedback, all of that. So
Yeah. And I think it's kind of runs counter to the narrative that had been kind of developing over the last few years, as even something like Instagram became so focused, I guess, on advertising as a platform, and retailers in general always wary of where they invest their time and what that's doing in terms of being able to drive revenue. So it's natural that some of them are going to question the value of really investing. And by really investing, I mean having people who are building community and constantly creating content of the kind that is required to really be of use to that audience. But obviously, when things really got crazy in the spring, that became a net benefit to you, whereas other brands, maybe if they were disinvesting in that area, may not have had as much impact.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very, very interesting kind of stories to get to this point in the year. So I kind of want to get a little bit more tactical. So there's been a lot of change, a lot of volatility. Vic, you said that one of the things you're doing is kind of shortening your kind of planning cycles. When it comes to data, I'm sure both of you rely heavily on historic data and an understanding of what to expect. And when that goes away, how are you using historic data now to help you drive decisions? And has that changed at all from before COVID? Vic?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I might have a little bit of a controversial response here, but I think we have never, as far as I've been here, really relied too much on historical data outside of sort of seasonal data. And I guess it comes down to, one, how you define historical data, and two, how you define the use of historical data. I mean, to some degree, we all look at it, right? I mean, if you look at, for example, a small sidebar, if you look at the stock market, historical data kind of becomes more and more useless the further back you go, but it could be very useful in terms of seasonality or cyclicals, like this is the down market and this is the bullish market. You could look at it like that. So you still use it for context. And directly to answer your question, this year kind of makes it even more difficult to look at it, because, for example, we could at least reliably look at, this is, Q4. For us, Q4 is usually pretty good. And now it's like, I think it's going to be good, but there are just so many confounding factors and things at play that we can just sort of plan for it. So I think it just goes back to kind of taking the nuggets that you can, for us at least, and looking at, for example, seasonality, looking at, to be a little bit more precise here, Prime Day, for example. I think that's something that a lot of us are thinking about, like, how's that going to impact us? So looking at Prime Day coming next week, so we can look at what happened last year during Prime Day. How did Prime Day affect our business last year, very specifically? And we can try to make some educated plans based on that. But still, there's so many other factors and second and third order effects of any decision we make. It's kind of tough. So to kind of answer your question, we do use historical data for context. We do use it to kind of help provide a framework for how we think about some big decisions. But for forecasting planning, I'm kind of more concerned with kind of looking at the inputs into or drivers of revenue and the properties of revenue. And kind of, for example, if I know my ROMs or my ROAS is a certain amount, is X, I can kind of reliably predict, at least over the next few days, what my revenue is going to look like, right?
Okay.
So I'm going to base it on that, as opposed to what was my revenue this time last year. So I'd rather use the fundamental analysis of our business and what we know about, rather than historical data. I hope some of that made some sense.
Yeah. So looking less at revenue in, revenue out for this time last year, or kind of the last quarter, and more looking at the kind of main heartbeat metrics of the business, like users.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but one thing I forgot to mention also is if you're in a growth trajectory, that also adds another confounding factor to using historical data.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Grace, anything to add there?
Yeah, I agree with Vic. It's a little tricky for us because we're so early on in our growth stage. And so really 2020 was supposed to be the year of clean data that we can use to be our sort of like benchmark. And then COVID hit and just messed everything up. So like our first year, we didn't even spend on performance marketing at all. It wasn't until last year that we did. And so our data is a little messed up because we were just so small and we're just starting to spend that we saw a lot of growth. That said, there's a fair amount of seasonality to our business. Q4 is actually our quiet season. We use Q4 to like plan for Q1, which is Q4 is when typically like 40% of couples get engaged between Thanksgiving and New Year's Eve. And so come January 1st, you have a lot of brand new engaged brides who are just starting to research who we want to hit through prospecting efforts. And then there are those who got engaged in 2020 who we've already prospected to who are now like, okay, it's go time. I need to buy my bridesmaid's dress. And so generally in the wedding industry, Q1, Q2 is just really busy. And so we know that about our business. And so we use sort of historical data plus what we know is our busy season to kind of do our forecasting. This year is going to be a little tricky, although based on our, customer insights, we feel pretty confident that a lot of spring weddings and on are still happening, even if it's in a much smaller capacity, even if the way the wedding is being executed is different. These weddings still seem to be happening. And so we're being pretty conservative from a planning perspective, or we're kind of we're cautiously optimistic. And so in terms of like, our inventory buys, are we going to buy to our rosy like forecast? No, but there's like a middle ground that we're trying to find just to be very conservative, yet not get into a situation where there's so much demand and we completely run out of inventory.
Yeah, that's interesting. Just out of curiosity, with the Zoom weddings that are happening, have you talked to any customers who are doing a Zoom wedding and using Birdy Gray, and are they still into
totally. Yeah. Yeah. Even if the bridesmaids aren't even physically there, oftentimes they are. They have just like a micro wedding is like less than 50 or less than 30 guests. But even if like a couple is opting for a wedding at home and bridesmaids are Zooming in, they're wearing their dress just to be a part of,
totally
their day.
Awesome. So obviously, both of you are now gearing up to high season. So we talked a little bit about that, and you have last year's high season to kind of key on, and you have the trends of this year. But what I guess let's start off talking about high season by like phases, and Grace, yours is different than Vic's is. So can you talk about where your concepts are in high season right now, and what are you doing right now to prepare for having a great high season? Grace, yours is in January. Do you want to start?
Yeah, so right now we are preparing. So most of our initiatives are based on newness or product. And so, for us, Q1 being our busy season, that's when we're launching all of our new product. It doesn't make sense for us to launch anything in Q3 or Q4. Dresses, that is, because that's when bridesmaids want access to the new styles, to all the new colors. And so right now we're planning all of our, assets, messaging, product development, so that in January, everything's locked and loaded and ready to go. For holiday though, we do think that there's a big sort of opportunity for us in the gifting space. And so we're launching products to speak to holiday gifting, like bridesmaids robes, matching PJs, things that you want to gift your bridal party. But we're kind of, we don't need to compete with others during Q4 when CPAs are so expensive. And so,
that must be nice.
Yeah, our focus. And then Q1 is when we're really dialing up prospecting, remarketing, brand awareness, and really driving home these new launches.
Got it. And Vic, I imagine for you, a lot of the asset building and stuff is done, and you're in the thick of the slow march up to the holiday season. So what are you working on right now?
Yeah, I mean, first I just got to say it was really cool. It's always cool to hear about counter-cyclical businesses and to not really worry so much about Q4 and Q1 being the place where you're kind of hitting the ground running, that must be awesome. But yeah, so no, that's really cool. Yeah, you're right, Josh. We are in the thick of things, just planning everything out. We are still, sort of building assets, building campaigns,
Okay.
things like that. I think some of this goes back to what we had just talked about using historical data to forecast the future and all that kind of stuff. There are some really big things that we don't know. The amount of uncertainty and volatility is kind of at an all-time high as far as I'm aware of. Obviously the things that we all know about, pandemic, elections and stuff like that. How might that affect? Is there stimulus coming in? It's completely out of our control. So we've got to sort of hedge against those things, whatever we do. There's something that's next week, which is Prime Day, which, it might be what flicks the flywheel and gets things going. But again, we all know we can't control for it. So getting those out of the way, we have to at least make some sort of plan. And we do think that this season is going to be really strong for e-commerce and for folks like us, fingers crossed. So we're planning for that. And we're planning on kind of being there for our customers and they're ready to buy. And kind of more tactically, I think right now is the time where we really do a lot more prospecting and kind of filling the funnel kind of thing. Again, our business is in luxury resales. These are expensive, even though they're resale, they're quite expensive items that people don't just kind of snap purchase and click through and just make an instant purchase, right? Sometimes it takes a long time. You have to be introduced to the brand, learn what the value is, maybe do some comparison shopping, and then they, come November, December, they're much more ready to actually make the purchase. So now we're filling the funnel, and then we'll be focusing on retargeting a little bit more around that November, December timeframe. So that's kind of like the big picture of what we're planning on doing. Another thing that I think we should mention as well too, where Q1 actually it might be of interest to us as well, is that we are a dual-sided marketplace. We have both buyers and sellers, and so after the shopping and kind of holiday season frenzy is over with, there might be an opportunity and interest for a lot of folks to start selling on Tradesy as well. So at that point, we will be looking at how we can support people that are interested in doing that. So in kind of broad strokes, that's what we're looking to do this season.
Got it.
I'll also add, Vic, that's a really good point. Like for holiday, we're always kind of focused on prospecting, and how we do that for bridal is through swatches. So, we get swatches in the hands of brides. She figures out her color palette, and then her bridesmaids will come back to make their purchases, 3 to 6 months out from the time that we prospect. And so for holiday, we're definitely focusing on our prospecting efforts, and we continue to do that. But in terms of retargeting, that happens like in January during the buy season for dresses, I'd say.
Well, like you mentioned, what was the stat? Like 40% of people get engaged between sometime in the holidays. That's a massive amount.
Yeah, it's actually Thanksgiving and Valentine's Day with a core concentration between Christmas and New Year's. So.
Wow, that is something. Yeah.
And along those lines of prospecting, what are you doing to prospect this year? Are you doing anything new or different? Do you still find that you're able to test despite the fact that maybe you haven't kind of like gotten to this point in the year to plan? And what are you trying this year if you're doing testing?
For us, our primary channels are paid social, so Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest is a really good one, and then paid search. But we are starting to test new platforms like TikTok. We're testing SMS. Pinterest is one that we just started to really understand and started to scale. And so those are probably the platforms that we're looking at. I'm also looking at like streaming, like podcast ads and also Spotify ads as sort of an emerging like test a platform that we're testing out. I don't know how it will go, but it makes sense to me. I feel like a lot of especially our customers are millennial females who are very digitally savvy. So yeah.
Are you running those now, or when does that launch?
We're hoping to test them before Q1.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
TikTok we're running right now, Snapchat as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Vic, what about Tradesy?
Yeah, no, that's super cool, Grace. I mean, I've been thinking about Spotify ads and things of that nature as well too. So would be really interested to hear how they go for you.
Yeah.
And then, you mentioned Pinterest. I think what's interesting when you think about testing and branching out to new channels is kind of where's your audience, right? Where that would be just because, for example, for us, I'm not sure if our audience is on TikTok. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I have to do some analysis. The assumption is probably not so much, but our audience is certainly on Pinterest. So that would be a good place for us. And we don't have a terribly huge presence there yet. So that was an interesting place for us to explore in terms of expansion and try to be, there in terms of especially sort of more mid-funnel type activations and things for us. So that is something that, we're looking into. I think another thing for us is also just sort of overall leveling up our creative execution on the platforms we're already on. And so, it's one of the things that we've been working with, a little plug for Metric Theory here, they've been helping us out quite a bit on, is helping us orchestrate, big tests on social and kind of doing really thorough tests where we test our old creative, old copy against all the new stuff that we're running, and really doing it in a methodical fashion where we kind of just keep upgrading and kind of make an engine of evolution, so to speak, where our ads just constantly get better and better. So we have some pretty big plans of running some big tests over Q4 with all the traffic that hopefully we're going to get. So I think that's going to be the main key, is kind of leveling up what we currently have and setting the stage for further channel expansion and creative expansion next year.
Yeah. And remind me, video, is that part of the plans? I know, well, TikTok is going to be a video platform, but is video an important part of the prospecting phase for high season for both of you?
We run YouTube ads, like video YouTube ads, it's more of a brand awareness play, less of bride swatch prospecting, I'd say.
Yeah, same. I think we definitely do video, and we definitely want to increase our proportion of video that we're running on, and also other channels as well too. So that is definitely going to be important for us. But I think it's same, just like Grace said, the video is sort of where people get introduced to the brand, kind of learn about what we do. And as they go down the funnel, there's different kind of formats and things that we use. And we have a lot of very direct response, kind of catalog ad type, activations at the bottom of the funnel that we probably will continue to be there.
Okay, got it. So let's maybe shift gears a little bit. We've talked a lot about app strategy, but there's a lot of other things this year that are going to impact retail businesses, especially when it comes to logistics, shipping, inventory. Both of you nodding right away. But with those being a major topic this year, can you discuss maybe how your businesses are coping with either delays currently or preparing for the potential delays for the holiday season, or even the high season, Grace, that you'll experience in Q1? And how are you communicating that kind of thing?
For us, shipping logistics this year has been really hard because, as you can imagine, we fulfill out of a 3PL that focuses on direct consumer e-commerce brands. And so once COVID hit, their volume went 3x. They were like, this is busier than our typical holiday season. And so we didn't get that much, and then layer onto that, they had all these restrictions and social distancing regulations. And so we had cases early on during COVID where customers weren't getting their packages until 15 to 21 days later, which was completely unacceptable. Once things started to course correct, Trump decided to defund USPS. And so we had all of these shipping issues. And I think this year was a huge lesson learned, and just how much the customer experience is impacted when you don't have your logistics or your supply chain in order. And so we saw our NPS score drop pretty dramatically because of just package and shipping issues. And we had to resend packages, and it was a huge mess. I think now we're in a pretty good place with our 3PL in terms of sending packages through different carriers by zones. and really holding our 3PL accountable when things get lost or it's not within our SLA or just the agreed time frame. And so it's getting a little better, and we've brought on additional support on our supply chain team to really help us not miss the mark on shipping on our packages. It's really important. I always tell my marketing team, like, you can spend all the money in the world on marketing and getting people to the site, but if people aren't getting their packages, that's like the biggest waste of our budget, right? And so yeah, it's been a little challenging, but I feel pretty good about it. I mean, again, Q1 is our busy season, so it's not like we're competing with the other brands in the 3PL during Q4, but there's another layer of complexity where they're planning a warehouse move during our high season. And so it's been challenging, but you know, at the end of the day, you just have to roll with it. And I think the biggest thing is just setting expectations with your customer. Just, you know, our typical policy is 7 business days, but like if we know that the holidays are going to be crazy, or if it's going to be crazy during the warehouse move, we'll change that policy to 14 days to give ourselves a little bit of time. And because bridal is not, most people buy their bridesmaids dresses about 3 months before the wedding, there's a little more forgiveness there. Like, people don't need to have it immediately. So it's managing expectations and just being very communicative.
Yeah, I think the key word there, the key phrase there, right, is managing expectations. That's the name of the game here with all this stuff. So we have an interesting situation with Tradesy because we don't really carry inventory. We're a marketplace, so we have third-party sellers. Like, I can be a seller on Tradesy. I have an account to sell. People like myself. So how do we manage that, right? Because it's really up to the seller to pack the item and sell it and send it out and make it happen. And we can't force them to do certain things, right? We can't force them to go to the post office if they don't want to. With that said, well, you know, we track these things really, really closely, and people are pretty good in general about getting stuff shipped out. The question is, as we get closer to the holidays and people are going to start becoming less forgiving, especially if they start looking to us as a gifting option, how do we manage that? Because even if it's another person who ships it and then the person misses Christmas, they don't get their Christmas gift, they're not going to blame the seller. It's on us, right? And it should be on us. We're the people providing the platform. We should take some ownership of that. And so again, it comes down to managing expectations via messaging, making sure that we're really clear at all touch points. You have 2 days left to get your package, or get your order in, kind of thing, and just message as much as possible. So on-site messaging, app messaging, maybe even in our ads and emails, things like that, just so people understand. And then also being very honest about if they put an order in on the 23rd, if it's a gift, make sure they understand that it's not going to get there in time. So that's really what we have to kind of be equipped to do. Luckily, most people are aware of these things, and I think a lot of us are kind of, in 2020, have gone through these issues, and we kind of all understand this is not a normal season, it's not a normal time. And so people, I think, are also a little bit more forgiving, but we can't let that be an excuse or something we fall back on.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I think the common thread between both of those is over communicate. Probably in our business, we probably call it setting expectations. But when things are that far out of your control, what more can you do? And even I've heard a lot of retailers, Grace, you mentioned third-party companies to help to kind of handle logistics, and we've heard a lot of companies kind of going that way. But that's a really unique challenge that I haven't heard about yet, which is, even if you choose to go with a company that ostensibly is experts in third-party logistics, then you're a client in a big portfolio, and if that portfolio explodes or they experience their own kind of challenges, that's still going to be outside of your control. So I don't know what the right approach is, or if there even is a right approach there, right? You balance between all of them, but
right. And from a customer end, they could care less about all of our internal supply chain woes. They just want to get the thing that they ordered.
Totally.
Cool. So I'm gonna switch gears and throw it to some of the audience questions that we've gotten in so far. First here is about promotional strategy. So what is promotional strategy for you both? And has that changed with the COVID impact to your business? So what promotions maybe have you launched this year? Or are you launching for your high season or what have you? And has that changed? Grace?
Yeah, for us, we're typically not a non-promotional brand. We're very precious with the promotions that we run, and we did pop in a couple extra promotions this year. I think everyone understands, like in a COVID world, when you're an event-driven business, I don't think anyone will dock you for that. I'd say for Black Friday, Cyber Monday this year, we think that there's a major first mover advantage. And so we're starting our sale a lot earlier than we typically would. And the sale is a bit juicier than it typically would be. So there's that. And then we did this last year. And so this isn't a COVID thing, but we're also doing an end of year flash sale. I think like the week between Christmas and New Year's is the new Black Friday. I think a lot of retailers are starting to do like that end of year sale. And we saw a huge success with it last year. And so we feel pretty good about this year.
Cool. Vic, what do you think?
Yeah, we used to be very heavy with promotional strategies. We had tons of site-wide sales and throughout the week, different category sales and things like that. COVID has forced us to adapt, and that's one of the silver linings for us as a business this year is we found that we could really pare down the amount of sales that we had and still, keep our loyal customers and have a strong business. And so we will use these kind of promos as, special offers whenever it makes sense, maybe to onboard new users. I mean, if you are a new user and you go to Tradesy, there is a first-time buyer offer that you'll see, for example, or to, retain customers that are about to churn, things like that. So really targeted use of these promotions, and then big tentpole moments like Black Friday, Cyber Monday kind of thing probably might be an opportunity as well too. But outside of that, not really a big part of our business right now. We're also doing things from a product perspective, such as we introduced a feature called Smart Pricing, which is just kind of a repricer that recommends to sellers, if their item hasn't sold for a while, this is a price that we recommend based on all this market data and algorithms and whatnot. And so that's also helped keep the prices competitive without maybe needing coupons, things like that. So those are some things. And we also have onboarded some new big partner sellers who have given us or provided a lot of really strong inventory at good prices. So I think it's shifting from a promotion heavy strategy to more of a value driven strategy. Like, you're getting good stuff at already everyday low prices kind of thing.
Got it. Another question about the holiday season, but maybe Grace, you can kind of treat this for your high season. How do you look at acquiring customers during this part of the year? Do you look at the return for them differently over the course of the year than you would other parts of the year for your businesses? So, yeah, maybe like cohort analysis, I think, is what it's getting at.
I mean, the short answer is it's not, they're a new customer is a new customer. I'm not going to necessarily wait somebody who becomes a new customer on Black Friday more or less than someone who is not. There may be some scientific and reasons that we should be doing something like that, but that's sort of getting into the weeds, and we have kind of bigger fish to fry from a cohort and segment perspective for us. But I think it's an interesting topic. I mean, if there's folks out there that would be willing to chat and talk about how we can do things like that better and segment cohort season based on season or quarter of activation, I think that's the kind of thing I would love to geek out on.
Cool. Grace, what about your business?
So it's, just so I'm understanding the question correctly, it's how are we acquiring customers during our busy season or holiday versus our typical season?
I think it's, do you look at them differently in terms of what your expectations are? Maybe do you have like a cohort around your high season customer acquisition that you view differently than the remainder of the year?
I'm not exactly sure. So we know, the customers that we acquired during our busy season, which is Q1, from a CPA perspective, because we're investing a lot in top of funnel, mid funnel, bottom funnel, it's actually our marketing. If it's not, we don't see as many efficiencies as you would think, because we're just dialing up our spend. And so, yes, it's cheaper to acquire customers, but we're spending so much more across the funnel that, on a blended basis, it's kind of the same. I don't know if that answers that.
No, yeah, I think it does, because a lot of retailers who are entering their high season, right, are also doing a lot of this kind of, in faith-based spending in a lot of places, thinking that it needs to turn into revenue, and they're probably unsure whether or not that revenue needs to all be realized in Q4, or if they can expect that there's going to be advanced purchases in the future. But all retail businesses are also going to be a little bit different in that regard, and certainly you both run pretty unique ones in that respect.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that we're starting to wrap up, get to the end here, and maybe we can finish even a little bit early. But one kind of final question for you both that just want to kind of leave everyone with. If there's, this has been probably a pretty challenging year in both of your careers, for your businesses. If there's one thing that you've learned, or a piece of advice that you have for retailers who may have also been hit by and impacted by COVID, what would that be? Vic?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, I was just in a meeting yesterday where we were talking with some PR professionals about crisis management. And they said something very interesting about how to look at crisis management. And it's like, to deal with a crisis, you try to figure out what does the end of the crisis look like, and you get there as fast as possible. And so you first basically say, okay, we're in a crisis, acknowledge that it's a crisis, and then be like, what does the exit look like? And acknowledge the pain that comes with it, and then get to that end as quickly as you possibly can. And I thought that was a really interesting way of summarizing kind of what we did as a company. Is I think we acted pretty fast to recognize that we were in a crisis situation, and that this was a real pain, and that it was going to be not so pleasant getting to the end of the road. And so that makes you ask yourself very tough questions. What do we really need to be doing? What do we really need to be focusing on? Do we need this a new campaign going on? Do we need to spend a ton of money on this other stuff? Or do we need to just kind of buckle down and get through this and learn how to be much more efficient as a business to get to that other side? And so I think that's from a narrative perspective, that is something that I would say, ask yourselves, how do you look as a company, as an organization, as an individual? How do you get through challenging times? I mean, crisis might be a dramatic word, but the idea is that it's a challenge, and how do you get through that challenge that you have no choice but to get to? And so I think that is sort of the lesson that I learned. And I think ideally, the kind of bonus points on this is not just, and you mentioned at the top of this about resiliency. And I think that's really important, at least as table stakes. If you can get out of this resilient, that's super important, right? But I think what would be even better, the bonus points, the A+ or the 4.2 GPA, whatever you want to give it, is becoming anti-fragile to all this stuff. So like developing a mechanism in which the next time you get hit by something like this, it actually makes you stronger. And that's really tough, right? Because what that really means is that you have developed some sort of mechanism as a company to weather volatility and become stronger from that volatility. And so there's no one-size-fits-all solution. There's no magic kind of spell that can make that happen. But you have to really understand, like I think what I mentioned earlier, like the properties of your revenue streams, the properties of what makes your company thrive, and really focus on those things, and hope that should be a part of that strategy.
Yeah, I completely agree, Vic. I think that, I guess, using the time or the opportunity productively, right? I think in terms of, I'm really proud of the way that we used it as an opportunity to build brand and build brand love, knowing that it just wasn't a time to get people to buy. And, externally, we built that connection with our audience or our customers. Internally, we just kind of went into survival mode. And I think for any sort of founder, it's hard to sometimes like lead with your head and not your heart, but sometimes like you have to make these really hard choices and you have to do what's best for the business. And you know, I think going into survival mode means all of that, but I think also leading with empathy is really important to help maintain culture and help, you know, make sure that especially your top performers are really still engaged and they feel safe and they feel excited about the business is really important. And so striking that balance is what needs to be done.
Yeah, I think that if I can just say that's totally interesting, and the trust that you guys built over this period of time is in some ways going to be part of that kind of anti-fragility that I mentioned. In that, if we do, you know, there's some people are saying we're going to live in a yearly pandemic cycle. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but whether it's not a pandemic, something is going to hit that's going to change the way we all do business and live our lives. And that now you have a community that's going to be like, this is the place that you go to when stuff like this happens, you know, and that's just kind of invaluable. You can't pay for that.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's a perfect place to leave it. So thank you both so much for your time and for sharing your stories and what you've kind of been through and how you're, you know, getting back on track for the rest of the year. It sounds like, you know, both of you have big high seasons coming. So, and Grace, congrats on getting to 3 years as a business.
Congrats.
Thanks for having us. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, we'd like to thank our contributors. We'd like to thank our attendees today. We're going to be following up with the recording for the people who have chosen to stick around. And we hope that you share it with your coworkers, with other people in your networks. We also have more holiday webinars on the way, so be on the lookout for the next one of those. Should be announced here this week. And we also have a new customizable Q4 planning calendar that you'll be receiving as a result of attending as well. So we hope that you make good use out of that. Yeah, so thank you all again for joining. Thank you for the panelists' time, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks,
Bye, everybody.
Josh. Thanks, Vic.
Bye. Thanks,
Bye.
Josh. Thanks, Grace.
Bye.